1914.
Who really is the faithful and discreet slave?
Who was watching? Who was providing the food at the proper time?
Russell and his associates quickly understood that Christ's presence would be invisible. They disassociated themselves from other groups and, in 1879, began publishing Spiritual Food in Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence. From its first year of publication, this magazine pointed forward by sound scriptural reckoning to the date of 1914 as an epoch-making date in Bible chronology. So when Christ's invisible presence began in 1914, happy were these Christians to have been found watching. So we have established in 1914 these Christians were found watching. But is this the truth? Were they in fact watching for Christ's presence? This should be relatively easy to find out by simply looking at the publications produced by the Watchtower at this time. What do the facts show? Let's take a look at the Watchtower from 1914. When was Jesus going to be present? And it reads, that time, as far as we are able to calculate, began in 1874. Since that date, we have been living in the parousia of the Son of Man. Okay, so Christ came in 1874, so maybe we weren't on the watch right then, but I'm sure we got on the watch just shortly thereafter, right? Let's check out 1916. This culminated in the year AD 1844, just 30 years before AD 1874, when Christ, the bridegroom and reaper, actually came, as shown by the Jubilee's teaching. Okay, so maybe not 1916 either, but considering that in 1918 they were appointed over all Jesus' belongings, surely they would have known then. And 10 years later, let's say 1928, let's see what they were teaching. Jesus stated that he would be present at that time. From 1874 forward is the latter part of the period of the time of the end. From 1874 is the time of the Lord's second presence, as above stated. Well, if we still hadn't figured it out by 1928, then when did we figure it out? Looking in the Proclaimer's book on page 133, we see here that it says a clear understanding of biblical chronology was published in 1943 in the book The Truth Shall Make You Free. Well, what does this mean? You know, if we could just get our hands on this publication, things would be much easier. Oh wait, here it is. Huh, looks like here on page 152, it looks like there was just a bit of a miscalculation. They just changed a few things. We better get out the Watchtower library to really figure this one out. Let's go to books. Okay. Next we're gonna go to God's Kingdom Has Approached. Let's try chapter 11. Here is the bridegroom. What do you think we're gonna find in here? Let's take a peek around. I mean, it's probably something we can, figure out of this. I mean, what's this? 1943. In the year 1943, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society published the book "The Truth Shall Make You Free." In its chapter 11, entitled "The Count of Time," it did away with the insertion of 100 years into the period of the Judges and went according to the oldest and most authentic reading of Acts 13:20, and accepted the spelled-out numbers of the Hebrew Scriptures. This moved forward the end of 6,000 years of man's existence into the decade of the 1970s. Naturally, this did away with the year 1874 CE as the date of return of the Lord Jesus Christ and the beginning of his invisible presence, or parousia. 1943? This gotta be wrong. That would mean Jesus would have been knocking for 29 years. And they didn't even open the door. 1914, Part 2. Who really is the faithful and discreet slave? Who was watching? Who was providing the food at the proper time? So from July 1st, 1879, when the first issue of Zion's Watchtower and Herald of Christ's Presence was released, up until 1943, they thought Jesus had already been present since 1874. So they certainly weren't watching when Jesus came in 1914. So they must have been doing something else if they were to be appointed over all Jesus' belongings. Were they providing the proper food at the proper time? Had his appointed slave done as he was assigned to do, namely, give to the domestics their food at the proper time, the master needed to make an inspection. The serving of food, the right sort of food, at the proper time was the issue. It had to be according to this that a decision must be rendered by the returned master. According to the Watchtower, Jesus Christ came to inspect the spiritual temple in 1918. Judgment then began with the house of God, and a period of refining and cleansing commenced. Well, let's take a look. According to the Watchtower, from 1918 to 1922, they started a campaign, "Millions now living will never die." According to the Proclaimer's book, though, they actually taught it till 1925. Regardless that they can't get their facts straight, they were teaching that millions now living will never die. And this was not a true teaching. This was a false teaching. Right food? Right time? Failed. Non-Christians, however, have for long adored the cross as a sacred religious symbol. Non-Christian. It wasn't until October 15th, 1931 that the Watchtower no longer used the cross on every one of its covers. This was 13 years after Jesus inspected them. Right food? Right time? Failed. Now let's recall that Jesus came to inspect the spiritual temple in 1918. Yet the Watchtower teaches that in the year 1919, the society came out of Satan's organization. So you're telling me that Jesus came in 1918 and approved of the Watchtower, which was part of Satan's organization, and appointed Satan's organization over all his belongings. I'm sorry, but there is no way Jesus approved of Satan's organization. Failed. But who else was showing Christendom's false teachings? Who else was preaching the good news? Who was preaching and teaching and making disciples like Jesus said to do? Well, according to the Proclaimer's book, other Bible scholars. So how then can we justify saying that Jehovah is going to destroy all those who do not flee to our religion, when these other religions were teaching and preaching the same things we were at the time of Jesus' inspection?